Welcome to my newest video. This video is extremely important to me because it contains a lot of information about things that you must be aware of. So, as some of you don't know, I've acquired a taste of the prophecies of the book of Revelation and times prophecies. I have seen deep esoteric things that can be shown through the Bible. Some meant for good and some others turn from their true good abilities to something rotten using reverse psychology. This level of reverse psychology is something even Satan uses against people. Although not a boast of sorts, rather a true message, I must say that Satan is a god, even though some of you beg to differ. Lest we forget, in 1 Corinthians 8 verse 5 it taught us that, "For though there be that are called gods, whether in heaven or on earth, as there be gods many and lords many." My other videos include the ideas of how deep Satan's madness really goes. I'll be making another video soon about what I've dubbed the celestial zygote. This video is about compound science, a psychological application of variable science, which in itself is about modularism. So back to what I was in regards to for the original concept of this video. I believe it has been put on my heart to have you come aware to this part of a prophecy. It is the potential value that is an eye-opener that you should regard. Now, as many of us that do know, and as many as do not, don't sit without, although, hear these words, for they are true. People labeled God in the past to have known everything before it was done. This has implanted a perception in people's minds as to how to balance the apologetics in the name of God. They believe God knew everything before it was done, so things happened for a reason, or they can't explain. They just put their faith. They develop blind faith in people's minds. Now, what this psychological warfare has proven is this, and this warfare I'll get into. It was shown to me as a message of true madness in the mouth of a scoffer. This warfare consists of a sequence of variable science in the name of retrospective emulations, or which seem the most possible. The best way to have you gain doubts and try to reason them out. This way to make small details change the truth behind an idea. This is dangerous on top of the celestial zygote, which is the ability to use modular compound science to produce a retrospective conclusion. This zygote is developed by the understanding of spiritual attacks and compound science, which is applying how two things can come to cause a cause and effect. Now, the celestial zygote, which in this video I'm not talking about, but I'm just going over because it's part of the revelation. It's used to change the way people understand their cognitive self, or how people understand their modular self in their mind. About how do you think that you know to think? Because by changing the way people think that they know how to think, it's easier to make your way into their mind. Is because they're not aware of like different spiritual attacks, like buffets, for example. Buffets, that you can feel it, but buffets, what they can do is they can take the thought you had in your heart out and make you concentrate on the temptation that's coming into your mind, rather thinking that the buffet is like used to emulate how it feels in your mind to have thoughts go through your mind. That's what the celestial zygote is, and you can see it in everyday life, but that's for another video. I've actually made videos about this before. For example, like how to understand demonic powers and abilities, the image of the beast, stuff like that is very, very deep esoteric information that I really do suggest you watch. Now, the celestial zygote, for the record, is able to be relayed even without this premise that God's omniscientific mind knows things in an omniprophetical way. That is the incorrect specific perspective on prophecy. Rather, this word changed to mean future telling in a superstitious manner. This can even be looked at in relation to one of the cause and effect principles of the celestial zygote, as I've called it. Look at the word prophecy being spelled that it means future telling often was. People are raised in that mindset of this word by tradition of their fathers. But through discernment of the Bible, we see that that word does not actually statically or intrinsically only mean that, but a lot of times it has become that. So people have called, they've made it seem that God can just know everything, or stuff like that. If we turn to Jeremiah 23 verse 16, thus saith the Lord of hosts, hearken not unto the words of the prophets that prophesy unto you. They make you vain. They speak a vision of their own heart, and not out of the mouth of the Lord. So we see the spiritual way of the word prophets being used against the common function, rather having us look at the partial similarities of the basic heart definition of the word prophecy to begin with. Rather, it comes as the telling of events to unfold, not intrinsically specific to any spiritual way. It's, for example, it could have nothing to do with spirit, or nothing to do with this and that. I could say, something bad is going to be on the news today. I'm prophesying to a degree, but you see how it's not like a superstitious religious functioned idea. It's rather just speaking like foretelling of events, is foreseeing events. And you can see that through the scripture Jeremiah 23 verse 16, because if it was statically about spirit, that means God was lying to us, because he said they speak a vision of their own heart and not out of the mouth of the Lord. So if prophecies come from the Lord and God's saying he's not saying it, why would God lie to us and then tell you later not to believe it? Like, what's the point? You know what I mean? Like, there's no point. So you see there that the word goes both ways. So this video is actually about how a certain sequence of scriptures being used in a specific correlative way to create doubt in your heart and to measure doubt can assimilate you into a false idea that is extremely deep. Like, we're talking about, this is not some basic thing. This is like something that it takes a very strong mind to escape this, because it's very deep. So this idea is greatly deepened in the recess of your mind if you know what end times prophecies are. It's related to the beast of end times. It's related to the world of the beast. It's related to the timeline in history that, like, we've been going through about ups and downs and ups and downs and downs and back all the way back up to bad and this and that. And I have videos on this, and you should watch them to understand. As in this video, I will only just briefly go over it. The prophecy that I've called it the Draka, because it means Raka, which is a word that means worthless one, and D is meant to be dragon. So Draka. So it's like basically, Satan saying you're not worthy of even life, so I'm going to try to send everyone to hell. So this Draka is the state of world we've been fighting against, one that was meant to exalt pornography, so that gods amongst Satan can use their psychic power to devour the emotions of people, committing adultery and sex in general. That may sound like, yeah, okay, that was probably the craziest thing I've ever heard. But the truth is this: if you look at the world we live in, I don't think it's coincidence that the world has always been full of adultery, lust of the flesh, all the guilty pleasures. I'm pretty sure one can faithfully say that, I think Satan would feed off of the idea of, like, people having sex. When you personally are having sex, you know the feeling that you're feeling. Satan can see that in your mind, so it's like he's made fetish dolls out of the world for his own, like, psychic power. So a lot of people doubt that Satan's psychic. I know there's a lot of high ministers up in the scene. They're super important. They think that, like, Satan's not a psychic being. They say, oh, how is Satan psychic? You're being superstitious and Catholic mind driven. But actually, it's because they don't read the Bible in depth in esoteric heart. They read it from, like, a carnal idea that they're trying to impress, like, Jesus and try to make a scene. But truly, they need to humble themselves so God can actually have his position to speak. So we know Satan is actually psychic, revealed to us in Mark 4 verse 15, which literally says, "These are they by the wayside, where the word is sown. But when they have heard, Satan cometh immediately to taketh away the word that was sown in their hearts." Okay? So that alone should be enough to have you see that Satan is actually psychic-minded, but there is a very, very, very deep and just extremely sharp way to like fix it in your mind. Imagine the temptations you have that are not biblically related. Would you say that the information sometimes is things that you've seen elsewhere, but you know that God would not tempt you to do bad, but you've seen how like prior things in your life that are negative, that aren't related to biblical things, have been used as a weapon against you? That's because this, like, Satan knows your thoughts. He knows the things that you think, even if they're not about just the Bible. Like, you can't be naive when it comes to spiritual powers, because you have to understand something. It's not a compartmentalized thing. It's a universal like power that is above like creation. It has the ability to tweak and manage creation on a finite level, and that comes with extreme differences than just a very compartmentalized idea. I hope that made sense to you what I'm talking about, though, that how thoughts that are not related to the Bible, that are negative, have been used, like you've been tempted with them to be triggered and enticed about them and drawn away of the lust of them. You can't deny it in your heart that that's true. You can pretend, you can try to argue against me, to try to like fight me as a person, but you got to think about it for yourself. As in, at the end of the day, you know you're lying. You know you're lying. So this video specifically, again, was about a certain modularized warfare that is extremely doubt creating when you have a lack of understanding. And I'll tell you this, a big shame to you men that think that God knew everything was going to happen before it happened, because you know what you're actually doing is you're sowing a perspective of God in people's hearts that creates the idea that God loves the idea of like bad. It doesn't care about bad. You're lying about all the other scriptures, that God is not willing that any should perish. God cannot lie. God is not double-minded. All those things is God would be double-minded if he knew bad things were going to happen and didn't care. And that's what you're teaching people in the church, is you're deceiving the masses, and you don't see it. Just because you have great popularity amongst the masses, most of these high-minded pastors, these high regard, all they talk about is the same topics. Healing is now, what faith in God will bring you, what prosperity will bring you, that demons are meant to take you away from God, but they're not. That's so easy that basically you read the Gospels and you learn that. Where's the depth of God gone? Where's the understanding? How many people can understand prophecies of the book of Revelation? A lot of these top pastors, they don't even read the book any longer. They've actually sealed the book, which is literally going against the very book itself. It taught us, Revelation 22 verse 10, seal not the sayings of the prophecy of this book, for the time is at hand. And a lot of men have sealed it, is they spent 20 plus years sealing this book. If they spent the time reading this book, their eyes would be open. Is they blinded themselves to God out of fear, instead of humbling themselves and realize they just don't know the answer, but they're looking for it. Okay? Like we're specifically told in Matthew 7 verse 7, ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. Moses was regarded as the most humble man in his time, because you know what he did? He realized that the power of the mind is the very preservation of it. And that's the key of understanding it, is that you learn that the mind itself is a matter to be like functioned. And when you don't know things, what do you do to preserve yourself? You try to figure them out. You humble yourself. It's why God said, humble yourself, don't exalt yourself or you'll be last. Mark 9 verse 35. There's a whole bunch of other scriptures that talk about exalting yourself. Matthew 23 verse 12. Matthew 10 verse 27. So, again, back to this. This marginalized warfare is as follows, that God was behind the way the world turned out. He wanted to mass populate the earth over time for a psychic sex fetish. as this idea is shown as exactly what Satan had planned in his heart by recollective measures. There's variable science exploits people use to put the idea at the forehead of God, which that is to say that God was the author of confusion about the story. Because if you read about Draka in the end times prophecies, you find out they are very, very, very much about a psychic sex fetish that was made by Satan. And I know it sounds devious, but you guys are gonna have to wake up and take it in. It's not coincidental the world has been full of lust of the flesh forever. We're also taught that Satan loves the things of the world. It's right in front of your face. I think that something that can have sex with 100,000 girls at once is gonna do it. They're gonna do it. Okay? I'm talking about a psychic sex fetish that, like, your mother, your sister, all your friends, Satan desires you to be a fetish doll. And if you haven't realized yet, that includes getting some people murdered in the name of, like, exalting the porn industry. Because it happened. Time proved that it happened. It's not coincidental we live in a world where the porn industry literally runs the world. Sex owns everything. Sex sells. Even souls sell themselves over sex, okay? Taking the idea how in the book of Revelation we're taught that the world of the beast even, like, sells the souls of men. It's all right on the table. Okay, you just have to think about it. Now, so I'm gonna go into understanding about what exactly this modularized warfare, how it's compounded to make it seem that God was the author of confusion, and it uses a very, very, very it uses information on a thing called reverse psychology. And the thing about reverse psychology is it uses reverse psychology to, like, guise itself. So reverse psychology is a very double-edged sword. So, now the premise of this warfare deepening in someone's soul is, it's the idea of, it doesn't necessarily have to be the idea of the prophecy of Revelation, rather it can be the state of the world, because it's a replicative thing, on top of the idea that God was omniscient in the concept that he knew all things before they were. He knows the beginning to the end. And the truth is that he can't actually do that because God has literally repented. That means God has shown double-mindedness if he believes that he was omniscient. And God cannot lie to himself. If you add to God's word or take away, you're technically called a liar in Proverbs 30 verse 5 and 6. You don't have to like think that you want to lie to be deemed a liar. For example, if you take someone from someone thinking, oh, that's okay, I just want it, you don't even need to know what the word lie is. Technically, you've stolen from someone, you know? Regardless if you think so or not, that's actually the scientific nature of reality, is that you're found a thief, or you're found a liar. Or, for example, let's do a deep one. If we were to follow the idea that it doesn't work like that, what about people, like, in the cartel or something, like, or murderers, that a lot of these guys, they don't think that it's murder, they just think it's like a good way to escape the harshness of reality. Are we allowed to not call them murderers anymore? They're murderers. What about when a soldier goes overseas to fight against, like an enemy? Is he a murderer if he kills someone in self-defense? You know what I mean? Who's the murderer, like, in the wars? That's why a lot of people, they've changed the context of the word murder, and it's made people stupid, because they forgot the science behind the mind. So, back to this modularized warfare. So, this modularized warfare actually uses a lot of reverse psychology and imputing doubt to your heart and trying to dissolve doubt by measure. Now, I'm going to start in a very simple light amongst the premises, which are this world full of, like, sexual lust and, like, all this stuff that it's en masse, like, it's huge. We live in a world that is exactly like the days of Noah were, full of lust. They said the coming of the Son of Man will be as the days of Noah. We know the Son of Man is coming in the end times. So 2 and 2 together, there you go. So amongst the idea that God is omniscient in the context that he knew all this would have happened before it happened, but he still did it. Like, he still made everything because it's just free will given to people. They make their own choices at the end of the day, unfortunately. As well as the idea that we live in like a sex fetish world. We turn to Revelation 2, verse 17. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches. To him that overcometh will I give to eat of the hidden manna, and will give him a white stone, and in the stone a new name written, which no man knoweth, saving. Keyword saving, right? Saving, he that receiveth it. Simply, in the light of reverse psychology about how like words work, this kind of would be enough. But what changing like doubt, the doubt they're trying to give you when they try to go with this warfare is this: and of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, before whom 3 fell, even, keyword even, of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. The main thing I'm pointing out here is the use of the word even, which by tradition would be looked at alongside in comparison to something otherwise. Rather, in this context, it is used to describe the same being, which by comparison would allow the idea of the word saving to mean both rescue from and reserved for individually spoken. Now, this is about the warfare. It's not about what I think. I think the word means, the way they used it in the Bible was when it says, which no man knoweth, saving, means except for. Now, holding like the idea in your mind alongside like reverse psychology and all that, think about this. In Genesis 6 verse 4, it says, there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. So that idea, in contrast to the idea of just like the notion of reverse psychology, as well as the idea that God knew all things would come to be, and as alongside like this fetish, like sexual fetish of a world we actually live in, you find that like it tries to like make you think that like I never saw like a guise of a character like this, that like these two ideas used like in a way to like create this doubt in your mind makes you think that like the world was like the author of confusion was God, but he's trying to like make it seem like he's not behind it by like explaining what reverse psychology is, or for example with that. But we have to remember something. Reverse psychology is a double-edged sword that even comes with the guise of itself to hide itself by being reverse psychology, because that's the very notion that it wants to accomplish. It's like a snake, like a very subtle snake. It tries to move its way in and slither its way into your mind and like really just deceive like the consciousness of the back of your mind. Now, the second partition of this idea excludes the premise that God is omniprophetical. That means the idea that, again, he knew like everything would happen before it even happened, but he still went through with like letting it be. Now, it actually hinges off a different premise that God, like with all his choice and sovereignty and power, could have stopped this from becoming a thing, but he didn't, because if you look at the prosperance of like the wicked people in the world at a modular, impactful level, alongside the light of this fetish of a world, it makes you start to like think again about like deception, that like maybe the confusion is in the hands of God, that like, you know, that God has created ways to like justify himself against these ideas by like boasting his character, that, oh, how could something that is holy and all natural like that do such a thing? And that's like the modular warfare that tries to make people believe that like it's almost like a weird way of like showing people the knowledge of the good and of the evil. That life is like actually like an instrumentality cult that like creates sex fetishes out of like worlds, because they're psychic beings with the all-seeing eye that feed off of like people's thoughts of sex, because it's like they become close. Like, you know, like in the back of your mind, like when you have sex, you know what it feels like forever in the back of your mind, is that you can recollect like sex in your mind, but just because you're not having it with your body, you still know the idea in your heart. Do you understand? And they feed off that on like a mass level with like hundreds of thousands of people. Imagine like the days that when people are like, you know, lots of people are having sex at the same time, like 100,000 people across the world. These guys are like literally like using psychic power to have sex with them all at the same time. So when you have sex, so are they. They're having sex with your mind, basically. And I know it seems like this sounds like something straight out of like, this guy needs like to be in a hospital, but you gotta think about it on your own. Because clearly you're missing the basic function keys of like the spirit to like see that like the power of like spirit is not carnal like thoughtfulness. It's actually a much different one. Now there's another thing I want to go over. So I've been tempted about this idea to trust in that, like, you know, the Quran is true and like the Bible's fake, and this is how I argued against it. So it was this idea that like Allah like didn't reveal himself for so long because he thought that people would throw him like under the bus over time, and he would rather just wait till like the world is like at a point where like it could like see Allah like speaking the things that like he wanted to say but couldn't because he was going to be brought low. Makes us think like, wait a second, okay, like, you know, let's go back to the points about the reality we live in. To dispose of this idea, mention how like compound science was used to create the world already, so which Allah supposedly was wanting to tell us, and he didn't, to avoid confusion. Explain how against all the doubt of your own you can justify yourself against how Jaka has been compoundedly getting worse over the foundation in time, and it was set in motion times before and times before that. It's been explained times and times again as a platform of mind, as a way to use science. Justify yourself against how the Bible, or sorry, about how the Quran was coincidentally written after the Bible of Allah, which supposedly also like basically like the Quran says like Yahweh is Allah, but Jesus is not like the Son of God, including Jesus in it, which thousands of people testified for thousands of years about, and how Drakal was already foretold since the times of Nebuchadnezzar, and how they wrote the beast that was and is not and yet is. Now the beast is a double-sided prophecy, one about a man and a world. You'd be very stupid to believe that Satan didn't know how he would change people's hearts over time. So the prophecies of the in the Quran, they seem like the same as the ones in the Bible, because the Bible showed us with more power that these things were always in the works, so always bound to be. The Quran just jumped in and tried to like sliver its way into like the side of people's minds to not look at the greatness about how, in one hand you have the Quran showing itself after the Bible, on the other hand you have the Bible speaking about the prophecies that the Quran spoke about thousands of years before. One thing we have to understand is a very powerful, sharp-edged like sword is, how is it that like something that coincidentally comes after something seems so much more true just because it says boastful things? It makes it seem less valid, because that's exactly what like a false prophet is. That's exactly what like people did even when Jesus came. Immediately people were going out to try to like change what the Bible meant, and it's not coincidental that somehow after like some book written by some random guy comes out and it's supposed to like be a new take on the Bible that's been being written over like thousands of years already. Like you see like, yeah, okay, the Quran is just honestly just like jargon. It's like literally written by a bunch of like psychopaths that really want to go cut off like literally everybody's heads off, because they're actually just all a bunch of maniacs that lost their mind like before they're like 30 years old. So don't let like the idea that like the Quran is real because it speaks also true things that the Bible said, amongst like trying to make itself seem so innocent that, oh yeah, Allah was scared everything was going to be thrown away under the bus before like he can reach like up to people's hearts in the end times and this and that. Come on, guys, really? That's like me making a book after Jesus preached and going, oh, something happened and I sound like I'm trying to be like, trying to trick your innocent mind, but like, you know better. So don't let something stupid and vain, puffed up imaginations deceive the way you think about the simple. So just as a recap, this video was about how reverse psychology is used as a double-edged sword to make things like seem that they're true by using small little fractions of like resolvable doubt and measure by measure in like the recesses of your mind is like, it's very important. And remember what I said, how like these prophecies, they try to trigger like your doubts in a certain way in light of like certain specific scriptures used in like junction with each other to try to make it seem true. Because it's very important that you're aware, because beyond what may or may not happen, people do that every day anyways, so it's good you understand how to argue against them, because this way you train your mind to like cast down imaginations and high things that exalt themselves against the knowledge of God. Amen.